Want some candy?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
I hear you looking for candy, man, bitch.
Give me some sugar, baby. Like scary movies.
Want some candy?
What's up, all you damn dirty apes? Welcome back to another episode of Monster Candy Podcast and an impromptu Crossing the Streams edition with not Oobliette Sparks from Tsunami Bomb, but Gucci T from the Jukebox Romantics. Oobliette had a personal thing that she had to attend to, so we decided to do a different movie that both me and Terry saw, and that's
as a bunch of hairy dudes, we should do this movie.
Perfect. And we're talking about the 2024 continuation of the Planet of the Apes universe, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes by Wes Ball. But before we get into any of that, because there's some stuff to talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about some
horror news, baby. I feel like every time I do it, I want to do like the Dial theme from Street Fighter. It's time for the news.
Hell yes. So horror news. Do you have any? Because
I have one, and then I have one that's related to a movie that we're going to do, or that we were going to do.
Okay.
So nothing really great. I mean, there's so much news. But I'm gonna just do it down to something that's very recent. Is that David Howard Thornton, who plays Art the Clown, has been announced as he will be playing Mickey Mouse or Steamboat Willie in the Steamboat Willie movie that is coming out, and the line of all the other Winnie the Pooh, Piglet,
right,
Killer, Disney things. And I've, unlike you guys, I've never seen any of the Winnie the Pooh universe things, and I'm pretty sure this has nothing to do. It's not the same directors or producers at all.
Right.
But I do think it's interesting because David Howard Thornton is pretty talented, and I feel like he probably had a lot of movies coming his way, and it's interesting that he chose this one. So I might see this one only because I think he's phenomenal as Art the Clown, and has nothing to do with my deranged love for Disney as well. As a lot of members of this podcast have a problem with theme parks and Disney.
Yeah.
I do as well too, but I don't know. I have no desire to watch any of those Winnie the Pooh movies, but I do want to see this now that he's in it.
I mean, he would probably be the reason to see this one at least. And just I get it. The Winnie the Pooh ones were whatever. I only saw the first one. We said we were going to do the second one, but I don't think any of us have seen the second one yet. But the content for this one, I mean, Steamboat Willie is definitely, you could talk about all the stuff surrounding the early Disney films and all that nonsense, but yeah, I think just as far as the lore of Mickey Mouse, I mean, this Steamboat Willie would be one to do.
I mean, it's kind of cool because the art it's called Screamboat, and
right,
it's in post-production, but the art is Mickey Mouse, or Steamboat Willie with a bloody knife arriving at the shores of New York City off the back of a steamboat. So I'm thinking Jason Takes Manhattan meets Mickey Mouse in the best way possible. I think it actually could be quite good, and so I'm excited for it. It could be terrible.
For sure. I mean, the subject material in itself is just more interesting than like Mickey Mouse and the typical, as we've come to know, Mickey Mouse. That gives it a little more texture. So that'll be interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I think so too. So that's my first bit of news. My second bit of news is about Godzilla X Kong, which I thought, Godzilla N Kong or Verse Kong, a movie that we're going to do soon.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting because all this week, probably the last week or so, we've been getting inundated with Godzilla minus one stats about
Right.
how it's the quickest growing iTunes movie, quickest growing Netflix movie, like at the same time, all this sort
Yep.
of stuff. And it's just
Oh,
interesting
oh,
that they
wait.
what?
So they have the dub version on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. I would, because my buddy said to me, he was like, "Hey, Godzilla minus one is on Netflix. I'm finally gonna check it out. Like I fucked up and I didn't see it in the theater." Um, and then as he's watching it, he's texting me and he's like, "Hey, dude, did you see the dub version? Like, was yours dubbed?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "Oh, this one is. It's dubbed in English." I was like, "What? Oh, that would have been fucking awesome, especially if it was in black and white and dubbed." So,
I'm gonna watch it dubbed in black and white now because I usually don't watch dubbed movies unless they're like Miyazaki movies because I
right,
feel like his movies he always gets like an A plus like star cast from America, like just really good like actors. And so for everything else, I always just skip the overdub. But
right.
I think for Godzilla, it kind of just makes
Yeah,
sense,
that's
especially in the black. Is the
right.
black and white version available online, like on the
I
streams, or
don't
no?
know if it, I think it's just the color version on Netflix. I know it's going to be on the DVD or the Blu-ray when it comes out, but it's not available in the US yet. So
Right. Yes.
hopefully,
I haven't looked yet because you know like we discussed, I've seen it already way too many times in the theater, so I haven't even looked at it like yet online. But that's
right,
cool that it's overdubbed. But
right.
what I was saying was, it's crazy because all week long we're getting all these stats about how great it's doing, and then today it came out that Godzilla vs Kong just became the highest grossing MonsterVerse movie of all of them,
Yeah,
which uh, which I think is interesting also. So I mean, beyond what you think of either of these movies, which Godzilla minus one is just a completely different type of movie than Godzilla X Kong,
right.
it bodes well for future kaiju movies and Godzilla and Kong movies,
Definitely.
which is like, those movies are, those movies are a big part of like our, movie going experience since like,
Yeah,
the
that's
60s. So,
definitely the common like favorite of everyone on this
right.
show. So
So
I mean, yeah,
it's doing
it's
pretty
good.
good.
Yeah, I like it. Now
570 million so far.
it's fucking crazy.
Just above Skull Island, which I guess Skull Island was a big one.
Well,
I,
I mean, it's funny because both the last Kong versus Godzilla and then this one, I saw them in the theater and there were a lot of kids in the theater to see this. Like especially the one before this one, like there was like a shit we talked about it. I mean, there's a whole fucking like school full of
it, there were
young
a
kids.
lot of kids at Godzilla X Con when I went.
Right. So, I mean, I guess that's good. And we need more monsters, so I'm happy for it.
Oh yeah, I'm fine.
So,
I wanted more Pacific Rim. I wish they didn't fuck that up.
yeah,
Pac
but
Rim One is so good for like a modern, like original kaiju movie.
right. Yeah, I would
It's
definitely
too
agree
good.
with that. A lot of people I know that are like I mean, they like horror movies, but they're more like horror monster
Actiony.
movie adjacent, but they're familiar with the kaiju stuffs and they know. And when they watch that, they were like, dude, it's like a kaiju movie. It's like a giant monster movie with fucking robots and shit. I was like, oh,
Yeah,
so
it's a cool idea.
yeah,
So that's the only news I got is the Terrifier slash Screamboat movie stuff and Godzilla X Kong.
yeah.
That's all my news. What do you got? I know you got news.
Well, there's like so much, and the episode that'll be coming out this week as we're doing this one that we did with Dominic. I mean, there's so much fucking news. A lot of it is video game stuff, which isn't my jam. Like it's cool,
Mhm.
there's horror video games, but it's not really my jam. And a lot of like, oh,
Oh, is
this
that
is
the
coming.
Texas Chainsaw game?
There's so much of it. Like there's literally a fucking video game for everything now, and that's a lot of the news. So I was kind of like scrounging around to find something, and I did that seems interesting. So the filmmaker that did Train to Busan
Mhm.
is going to be doing a it's described as a action horror movie. 35th Street is the name of it. And they're not given too much on what the actual plot of it is, but they're describing it as, definitely horror and definitely a lot of action. So I'm assuming similar to Train to Busan, which is cool because I loved Train to Busan.
What a great movie.
Yeah, the second one I was not really into because it seemed like they used a lot. I don't even know if it was the same director. But they used a lot more like CGI.
I don't think I saw the second one.
Yeah, it was Peninsula, and it was
Oh,
very,
yeah.
yeah,
Yep. I remember. I didn't see it, but I remember
yeah,
it.
very like actiony, like Korean movie
Mhm.
where shit's just really ridiculous, as opposed to Train to Busan was, zombies on a train and they're coming after you, so there wasn't too much acrobatic stuff or anything
Mhm.
too out of the ordinary. It was pretty simple. Whereas this one is, or that one was, Peninsula was a little more unbelievable or extraordinary,
Right.
as they say.
He didn't do the movie The Host, right? No, I don't think he did.
I don't believe so.
I think it's Bong Joon-ho who did that, which I always yeah. Bong Joon-ho did that, which is amazing. Have you ever seen The Host? It's really good. It's like
I
a
I feel
Korean
like I
monster
did.
movie.
Right,
It's like 2006. He's also the same guy who did Parasite
right. Oh
and
yeah.
Snowpiercer. Yeah,
Yep. So, but
that,
yeah, that was my little nugget I found. I was like, oh, that seems cool.
that's
Like,
cool.
yes, I mean, but it with it being action, I'm sure it'll be, you know, crazy. But
Right,
you know,
right.
whatever. It's something new, at least from somebody new
Hmm.
ish.
Hey, before
Anyway,
we jump into this, did you see
yeah,
The Strangers yet?
I haven't. I didn't
I
see
don't think
like
I'm going to.
me either. I mean, even the trailer from the first one, and then all the other stuff from it. I'm just like, eh, like those.
Cool. Then I don't need to watch it for the show. That's what I
Yeah,
was getting at.
yeah. I mean, unless Oobliette wants to do it, I have no interest in it. That's just not really my
The first one is beloved, and I didn't really like it when it first came out. And going back, I realized it's a much better film than I thought it was. But
right.
when they made another one, I was like, I don't know. Strangers 2 is super fun. It's a really good soundtrack.
Yeah,
Uh, I like anything that's like murdering to like straight up just like, push it to the limit.
right. Yeah,
So,
those ones aren't necessarily my most favorite out of the horror stuff or like the slasher type things. I'm just kind of like, it's like slasher, and then below that is the ones, oh, hey, we trapped you and we're these crazy people and we're gonna get you. I'm like,
right.
whatever. Like, I could drive over to Oakland and see that in real life. I don't
Right.
know.
I think that's why people think it's scary, right? Because
Well,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah. I
can
mean,
actually
definitely,
happen.
yeah.
Like wrong
It's
turn style or Texas
definitely
Chainsaw
way more
Massacre
real.
style.
But yeah, I'm like, I
Yeah,
can
yeah.
kind of actually see that, witness that in real life.
Yeah.
Um,
I come to the movies to escape a little bit.
right. So, but yeah, that's all I got. So, is that
Cool.
anything else before we end this segment?
Now let's jump into our rocket ships and fly to the Forbidden Zone, baby.
All right. Well, that's been.
Oh
All right, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
no!
Um,
Right off the bat, what is with the naming of these movies?
dude,
They're all over the place.
yeah, and they're long. They're really long.
They're always like that. They've always been that way,
Yeah.
and I appreciate that. The Apes franchise is strong with the titling. And you know what? And I went back and I've rewatched the old Planet of the Apes not too long ago, and you know what? They hold up pretty well too. I mean, they progressively get worse, but they're still pretty watchable. And
Oh,
all of these have been
absolutely.
really good. All of these ones have been really good too. From the James Franco one to now, like there's been a dip and dive here or there, but they're all pretty watchable.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So let me read the little summary they
Do
have
it.
here, and we'll get into it. All right. Many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. And then there goes on to be like a 3 paragraph fucking synopsis, which I'm not going to read, but
Of
yeah,
the whole movie.
yeah, basically. So, all right. Planet of the Apes. Now, the writers were Josh Friedman, Rick, was it Hoffa or Jaffa and Amanda Silver, which Hoffa and Silver were writers on Rise.
Right.
And then Friedman, he did a lot of visual stuff or, art stuff with
Yep.
it.
And Wes Ball directed it, which I thought was interesting because I didn't like any of their movies. Like the Maze Runner movies they just were not good movies. So I was skeptical about them being attached to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was, the movie was directed fine. It was like-
Yeah, I thought the directing was fine. There was definitely some issues I had with it. Do we want to start with the what we didn't like or what we liked?
let's start what we liked.
All right.
Oh, you know what? Let's end positively. Let's shit on it for a bit.
All right. So my whole issue with this thing is
Uh-huh.
considering that there were two writers on that were on for the previous for Rise. All right, this story kind of goes every which way. Like there's a lot of it, and that was a big issue because it's 2.5 hours long.
It's
First of all,
long. It's long.
right, and it gives like a little, and I'm not all, I love a quick little recap in the beginning of movies because sometimes you don't need it. Okay, Caesar dies and there's a thing. And then it kind of gets into, all right, it's the future. How many years into the future? Because
I think it's like it's enough generations that there's nobody left that actually knew Caesar. So
right,
we're to believe it's like 100 to 300 years,
right,
right?
which
I
is
think it's 100 years.
oh, right, which is crazy because first of all, one of my big issues was so they all in movies do this a lot. They kind of have like parallel languages going on at the same time. So all these apes and gorillas and monkeys, they all speak English. All of them. They all understand it. Yet they don't know what a book is. They wouldn't be able to read English
Oh, that's
if
part of the plot, though,
yeah, but it's like how
because that specific group of apes was isolated on purpose.
right, right,
The
right,
leaders, what's his name's dad, Noah's dad,
right.
was like specifically like their elders kept them apart from everybody because they knew of all the other shit on the outside.
Right,
And so they kept them dumb on purpose, kind of like the village.
right,
So,
right. And like I
and
got that.
that's why their dialect is weird. And that's why when they meet the big orangutan, who's the fucking man,
Right, right. Yeah,
that dude just like, has a lot more eloquent English. But yeah, I know what you're saying. It is annoying because you're like, didn't we watch them like 100 years ago have better English than this?
right. And even if you keep like, you would have to kill off all the elders and then raise, which maybe they did, but they didn't really explain if they did that. But then raise like stupid apes and then exile them. So then they raise other ones. And then I'm like, there's got to be someone that sneaks in. And then there's like humans running around that are there's like two sets of humans, spoiler alert. There's like the ones that are from the OG ones where they're wearing like fucking rags and they're like ooga booga in a
Right.
stream and shit.
Their brains have degenerated from the disease
Right,
that they've gotten from the
right.
apes. That's
Which
makes
that
sense in storyline.
it does. That whole angle too. I don't know. I much prefer the time travel aspect of like
We're
the
getting
Planet
there.
of the Apes.
Don't you know we're getting there?
Yeah, it's gonna take another like three more movies,
Two
I guess.
movies.
Yeah,
At least I think either two more movies or at the fourth one from where we are now. It'll be
right,
all
right. I'm just like,
back at where we
oh
started.
my
So
God.
by the
So that
time my kid goes to high school,
right,
we'll be there.
right. But then there's these other humans that are perfectly smart and able to run technologies and everything. And I'm like, how do you people not cross
All right,
paths with
all right. Let's stop dancing around the fact because anybody who's listening to this knows about the movie. So let's talk about it.
right,
The girl Nova, which they're all named Nova, which was a nice joke in the movie.
right,
Um, um, she infiltrates their little group of people, or like, we're led to believe that they like let her in, but she's really like infiltrating it. Because the first thing I thought of, now that you say that too, when we were watching the movie, was that all the other humans who were in like their loincloths and just like,
right,
Ooga booga. Like, like she was the only one wearing like actual clothes. So she
Right.
was wearing like, so when that was happening, I was
Like a
like,
sweater and flared jeans. And I'm like,
she was wearing like like tight, skinny jeans and like a tank top.
right,
And so like, or not, it was tattered, but sure. And
right. It
so
was just dirty.
as so like as I'm watching that, I'm like, okay, something's up with this girl. And I appreciate that. Like they didn't give it away.
Right.
But especially at that scene then when she sees the other humans and they're in the river and you think she's gonna run to them, but she's like, nah, fuck them. I'm going the other way.
Right.
Like, so like clearly she has alternate motives and she's gonna get there. And I like the story that she's using the apes. It's really good. Like that storyline is really weaved through
Right.
there nicely. However, like, was it really necessary to send her alone on this mission from like this base?
Right.
Where
Right.
all the pretty people are still alive? Because like everybody on that base was really pretty
Yeah.
and they clearly had some good technology. Like, what was really in there that they were trying to get that they needed? Like, there was all this shit, and she just fucked it up. And oh, the hard drive. That's what
Right.
it was. She
Yeah.
was really
Yeah.
there for the hard
The
drive.
floppy
Oh,
disk.
cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I like that. I like that storyline. I don't think it needed 2 hours and 40 minutes of
No,
setup. Like
that's the
that
thing. It's like
the setup of like like Nova's family, Apes life, like how they're fucking bird hunters and nonsense like that.
right,
Like
dude.
unnecessary. Unnecessary.
Exactly. That felt to me like they were like, all right, how do we make this a little different? Let's just add, oh, they collect eagles, and that's how they hunt
Right. And that's
and
how the
everything.
movie gets. I mean, it explains the ending and how they beat Proximus and all that shit.
Right.
And then you realize, like, okay. I know we're talking about things we didn't like, but it plays off to a good part of it. Is like, oh, maybe he wasn't wrong. Maybe he was right that the fucking humans were gonna fuck them over anyway. Because that's exactly what happened.
Well, yeah,
You know,
yeah. Well,
you
that's the
know?
thing. It like went, all right, it starts off with the death of Caesar and then jump into the future. And then you have this camp, this little community of apes that are doing their thing and they have issues with the other apes, but whatever, they're away from where they're at. And then they have the people, which they call something else. They don't call humans. I forget what they called them.
I don't know.
Yeah. And so it's like, all right, you see the evolution, but these apes are still kind of stupid, or they seem less advanced than the ones that were, 100
Previous
years
to
ago,
them.
like
Yeah.
whatever.
Which you're totally right.
Right.
That's totally a thing. And it was definitely something that bothered me too, because it slowed down the pace of the movie.
Right. So that goes through this whole, coming of age thing with this group of apes, and then everything shits the bed when Proximus and everyone, they just pillage everything and shit hits the fan. So that you're like, oh, okay, these are the bad apes. And then, another hour's worth of that, which is fine. Like
William
I
H. Macy.
right. I liked all this stuff, like watching it. But then it gets back to man versus ape. It just gets all the way back to the nucleus of the Planet of the Apes, which is
Right.
always man versus ape, but whatever. And I'm just like, man, that was a roundabout way to get all the way back to this. And so
I
that
think
was,
there was
yeah, it was
I
just
think
bugging
in
me.
there is a really clean story. There's like two or three main storylines going on
Right.
with we're 100 years past Caesar or whatever. And so I like the main overarch of like, hey, this is what it's like when a religious figure or a figure that was important to a society has passed on and other people are twisting their words, So
Absolutely.
you have the orangutan being like, this is what they really meant.
Right.
This is what he meant. And then you have Proximus who's using it for a whole different thing. But
Right. It was very Jesus versus the Roman Empire type of
totally.
thing.
And that I loved about it. And then I
Right.
do really did like the infiltrating and the secret of this girl into the camp of it all.
Right.
And I like that she had to get a thing, and in the end you know there's this whole thing about space. They were looking through the fucking the
Telescope.
telescope, and there's like I appreciate all these nods and foreshadowing and all this stuff. I just I feel like there needs to be someone in these movies. I don't know whose job it is because I don't make movies, but I
Right.
think it needs to be like someone's executive decision, an editor, to chop up some of this. Like there is like 10 or 15 minutes of this movie that could just like let's
Oh,
just get
I
rid of
mean,
it.
there's
Like
probably at least 20 to
yeah,
30 that you could really slim down.
but there's a lot of movies that you could, right? But
Yeah.
this one specifically, as I was watching it, I'm like, I really like this movie. I usually don't, but things that are that CGI'd, like
Right.
even Godzilla X Kong, I'm like, I know what I'm getting into. I'm gonna get
Right.
into the CGI fucking war.
Universe. Yeah.
Like like that's why I don't like any of the fucking Marvel movies because it's just like a screen. At
Right.
least this was, the over they I know that they shot on location in
Hmm.
places that had actual overgrowth and like abandoned buildings and stuff like that. Like I that stuff is very clear and it looks great. Like the
Right.
movie looks great, like
Oh yeah.
really good.
Visually,
I never once
it's
did I
great.
felt like I was watching computers and like humans act.
No, no, it's very when you're watching it, you can actually get into okay, I'm watching, evolved apes.
But when I did fall out was literally when it was slow. And I'm like, oh, like
Right.
there's a good story here. Like there was a great part where the orangutan and Noah pull in Nova and they give her like a fucking blanket or whatever. And he's like, let me tell you what's been going on. And he's gonna explain to the orangutan's gonna explain to Noah like everything about Caesar and what Caesar stands for and all this other shit. And I feel like that was important. That should have been shown on screen and not a lot of other things. Because then the girl who was with them, the Nova girl,
Right.
would have been aware of their true intentions as apes. And so
Absolutely.
it would have created way more of an emotional attachment between the three of them. And then, when the orangutan fucking, drowns in the river, you're like, fuck. He's like
Yeah,
the only
yeah.
one that he's the only one who's like who has it together. Like
They're
everybody else is fucking crazy.
they
And so, and
com-
and I know he's alive at the end of the movie. There's
right.
like a spoiler that he makes a sound or whatever. But like, I don't know. I think as a writer and as a storyteller, there is a huge part of the story that's missing in that cave scene when they go to. He says, "Let's have a fire." That's what he says, and
Yeah.
let's talk. And they're going to talk about Caesar and Caesar's beliefs, and the girl is there with them, and that would
Uh-huh.
have been a huge part of the movie that they're just like, nah, we need more fucking running around.
Well,
You
yeah,
know?
that's the thing. They took so much time to set up the whole ape community
So
when
much time.
when they got to the orangutan, and you're just like, oh shit, okay, so he's like the soothsayer, like he's gonna break down what the true word of Jesus Christ was, because they kept
Yeah,
referring to him as like a Jesus figure. And you're like, all right, cool. And then they're just kind of like, we'll spend 5 minutes on this, and then they'll chase him down for 10, and then he'll die, or what, he'll die in quotations. And then,
right,
we'll get to, fucking the other apes, like his
right.
his hero moments and stuff like that. I'm just like, they're like, that was the movie. That right there was the movie.
Right. They
But
were so close. And it's tough too because they fucking nail the first Planet of the Apes. The Rise of the Planet of the Apes with James
right.
Franco is such a solid movie. And it is long, but it's all important character and relationship building. And
Hmm.
even the other ones where they fall off with War and whatever the other one was called, I can't think of it
Yeah.
now. Um,
I've lost track.
but they all like had like very like straightforward story plot elements. And this one I
Hmm.
feel like meandered a lot and had like three really good ideas that just didn't flesh out. Like they didn't really like dive deep enough into them. I
They could
mean,
have been
we're led to believe that in the next movie we'll get more info into this whole thing, but
right.
I'm assuming that we're going to be another 100 years in the future and they'll just be at war at this point
At
again.
least. But like that could have literally been three separate movies that you could spend an hour and a half on and really get to like an in-depth kind of deal, as opposed to,
Yeah,
all right, let's kind of mishmash. Let's have three separate stories going and spend almost 3 hours explaining it, kind of explaining some stories way more than others, but the ones that
right.
we did spend the time with weren't the important one. So it's like, oh my God, stop doing this.
Right, and I get it. It was all a setup so that they can climb up there. The whole climbing thing in the beginning of the movie was
Right.
so that they could climb the rock at the end, and
Oh, yeah.
he could sing his bird song or whatever. Like and like I don't know. There was like a lot of good, and there was like some other things. I don't think it's a bad movie at all. I like it, but
No,
it's like literally one I will never go back and rewatch it.
nope.
Like I don't need to at all.
Mm-mm.
Um, it was, it was fine. It was a good like middle movie if there was three of them, and there's not. There's fucking three more probably coming.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
fine with it as an eight movie. I thought it was good. Let's talk about some good things.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about the stuff we like
Yeah.
even more.
So even more so. So I
Yeah.
really like the the use of the practical sets mixed with the CGI. I thought that was really good. I thought that the acting was really good. I just thought that just even like the I don't know secret betrayal of everything. I don't know. I don't want to sound like I didn't like this movie because we started off with the negatives, but there was but there was just it was good. It was a fine movie.
Right.
There's the problem is I don't think there's anything I loved about this movie, and that's where it falls off. And I think it's a great like middle point in the storytelling of the Planet of the Apes, like the new version of the Planet of the Apes.
Right. Right.
I don't know necessarily think it was something that we needed, but I think it helps in the world building more so. So like the next movie will feel more important because of this movie. I feel like this movie will have more of an impact on where the franchise is going, and so it's hard to tangibly see that right now because it just seems kind of just like a non-important middle of the story. You
Yeah.
know,
I'll agree
it
with
was like
that.
starting over but not starting over because it was like still in the same universe 100 years later. So kind of
That's a
like a Star Wars movie,
right.
like,
Right. Yeah, it definitely felt like that because it felt like, all right, we're doing away with the old, and now we're starting from this point. So everything before is just history and, just handed down from generation to generation, but has been forgotten by at least this portion of apes.
the original Planet of the Apes, though. Weren't there big time jumps in those ones too, or not as big?
Yeah, I mean, the
I'm
later
trying to think,
ones,
right?
yeah, the later ones, like my brother was huge Planet of the Apes fan. I remember the first one, a lot of the second one, and then after that, it starts getting like these where it's like,
Right,
oh, fucking, I don't know, car salesman of the Planet of the Apes, and then there's like a TV special, and then there's this, and then there's that, and there's
right. It
just a
became like
lot
a
of,
whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm like, I don't even know where it ended up as far as movies go. Um,
right.
which is one of the things one of the issues I have with universes and how they try and prolong certain things like this. I mean, these movies are fine and they're entertaining or whatever, but it's like the Friday the 13th franchise and even uh A Nightmare on Elm Street had that where it's like, well, not so much because it was the same character through the whole thing, but Friday the 13th like had lightning in a bottle with the introduction of Jason as he is known now. Hockey mask, the undead, he just keeps coming back. Whereas, and have it still kind of connected to the original, which was a one off movie where Jason wasn't even a main character because he was dead. It was his
Right.
mom, and like, in that little dream sequence, or was it a dream at the end that Tom Savini put in, is what it is. And that opened the door for sequels. But even like the second one was still kind of like, oh, okay, you're stretching this. And then the third, he gets the mask. And then it turns in, but then there's also like, what was it, five? Five, where it's the imposter of Jason. And then it starts turning into like a whole other thing. So, it, this is kind of that. But that aside, um, it was fun. It was a fun movie. Like after probably the first 45 minutes where the story started getting loose, or they just started, okay, well, now we're going to introduce this storyline and then that
Yeah, I think a lot
storyline,
of
and
people
not
were saying it was hard to follow. You know.
right. We're not going to focus on the important part that we spent 15 minutes on, and then we're going to do all this. After that, I just kind of just gave up on this storyline and just watched it for the fun of watching it,
Yeah.
which
You
I
know,
think,
now that and I did too, and I
yeah,
think breaking, and I think going into it, I went in with low expectations because I didn't think it looked that great.
right.
So I was pleasantly surprised that it was better than expected. I think the same thing for even Godzilla versus Kong or X Kong, whatever it was. Same thing.
Right.
I'm usually pretty positive going into movies, and I was just based off the trailers. I was like, all right, this could be go either way. So I went in low. Um, and now that we're like breaking it down and talking about the good and bad and the plot points and storylines, it sounds like, if we're at 2.5 hours of a movie and we have five pretty strong like storylines, right? Like we have like this new family of apes. We have like the other apes, like the Proximus apes. We have you know, the humans that are dumb,
Right.
the
Right.
dumb humans, and then we have the humans
The
that are
regressed
not
humans, and
the
then
human, yeah, the regress humans, and then the humans that have were not affected by the virus, who are like in a stronghold. Um, and then we have like the overarching Caesar story, right?
right.
So we have that. So that's like five stories right there, right?
It's a
And
lot.
we're in 2.5 hours. So never did I feel like I was really being bombarded with information other than the dinner scene that
Yeah.
they have, where it was very much exposition of things and sort
Yeah.
of stuff like that, and the plans of like getting inside this vault or whatever was inside there. But now that we're talking about it, and we just came off a Monarch series, which wasn't that strong, in my opinion.
Right.
I thought it started off good and then kind of whatever. This movie would have been a 4 to 6 part miniseries on the Planet of the
Absolutely.
Apes.
Right.
And I think it would have played a lot better. Because you would have had that first hour fleshed out of the stupid fucking treetop Ewok Endor village
Dude, dude is very Ewoky.
that they were living in, right?
Yep.
So that would have been like episode one, and then it could have ended with them getting attacked, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the first episode. Then episode two is the journey,
Yeah.
that they went on. Episode three is everything on the beach. Episode four is the whole battle at the beach. Episode five is like the fallout. You could have done it. Dave could have fleshed it out into 45 minute to an hour long episodes and been a 4 hour to 6 hour miniseries. And I actually think it would have played a lot better. I think it would have been less, um,
100%.
I think all of their ideas would have been fleshed out more because it sounds like there was two writers who had a bunch of different ideas, and they were like, "Yeah, those are all pretty good. Let's
Yeah,
try to
let's
get
put
them
him in
all
there.
in."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I don't think that's bad. The problem is it loses its focus, and the reason why it loses its focus is because it's so long.
Right.
So,
And you have to
um,
like directors and writers seem to have like this aversion to realizing that as they're making it, they're like, let's just make a 2.5 hour long movie and we'll just put a bunch of stuff in it, a bunch of different storylines, and we'll just cram it all in. Even though if we sit down and look at it on paper, this is, if not 3 or 4 seasons of a TV series, or
right,
like 2 movies, 2 2 hour movies.
right, because I think it's actually probably harder to make a better movie than than it is to make a bloated series. Like you got
Yeah,
to it
yeah,
takes a lot to like cut shit out. It's
yeah,
tough. Like I get it. You got these
yep,
ideas and it sounds cool on paper and you filmed it and now you're cutting it to the floor.
yeah,
So I see that being a hard thing, but even just like as we analyze it and talk about how this movie was pretty good but not great, I think what separates it is that it seems like it was written in a long form. Like this could have been,
hmm,
it probably was a 4 hour movie,
probably,
and they probably cut it down.
probably, yeah.
Like originally in the raw cuts of everything, like they probably started off with like 4 or 5 hours to cut through,
Oh
and
yeah,
so
there's a fucking Schneider director cut that's
oh yeah,
six and a half
yeah.
hours long.
But I think a series, if anything, if we get out of the Apes franchises, is I wouldn't mind a Planet of the Apes TV show now.
Yeah, I would
So
be way more on board with that than a 2.5 hour long movie with 5 different storylines going on.
right, and I get the financial mechanics behind that. Like it'll be very
Yeah,
expensive to make because to make it look good with all those people in mocap suits and doing the whole thing, like
yeah. I mean,
sure,
and also
but
they think like this is our chance. We don't know if we're gonna get, the opportunity to do another one. So let's try and set it up that there is enough, set it up so there's room for another one and that people want to
right.
see it. But it's also like, man,
The story's there though. Wasn't there?
yeah,
There was a Planet of the Apes TV show. I mean, it was nothing. It was like the '70s and
right.
terrible. But
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I think it could be done. I think it could be done probably easier than a lot of things. But and I would give it a shot, especially if it was like this. Like they're all been good, you know. I've
Yeah,
seen every one of them in the theaters.
they're
So
all
there's something
entertaining
about
for
them that's
sure.
making people go to them.
I mean,
And it's not like,
they
you know,
look cool, you know, like
yeah,
they're
they look
visually
cool. Yeah.
stimulating. Like you can look at them, and
Yeah, yeah.
like I said, after I just threw the plot away and the story, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch it for apes
Oh,
fighting other
there
apes and
was one
whatever.
visual thing that had me dying laughing when the orangutan was still alive and he was riding the horse. I was like,
Oh
that's
yeah,
not the right visual. He's way too big to be on that horse.
right.
Like the horse would be crushed underneath him.
Well, yeah, when he was like, I got a horse, and then went back. Not that it was an extremely undersized horse, but I thought that was
It
going to be the joke where he's going to come out with like a donkey, and it's just like a super small pony,
it
as
did
opposed to
look
like,
big though.
it didn't look big. It was like, is that too small, or is it just big enough?
Maurice, that's his name, fucking
Yeah.
Maurice. Which all the orangutans are named Maurice
Yeah.
in the Planet of the Apes world.
Yeah. Yes. But
Which is
yeah,
interesting also that they just keep like reusing the same names and everything.
and I love the nods. Like I love that. The
I
callbacks and
love the
stuff like
not.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
they clearly it's been telegraphed that they're trying to get to the point where we were in the first movie with James Franco, where we see the spaceship take off, because that's a big focus point in
Right.
the first movie. And so, in theory, at some point in one of these future movies, we're gonna get that these were the people that left in that spaceship, and we'll have the whole reimagining of the first original Planet of the Apes movie,
Right.
which
Right.
I'm fine with. You know,
Yeah. I mean,
I don't think there's ever a wrong like Planet of the Apes is one of those things that it's not fucking Jaws. It's not
no.
really even Star Wars. Like it's like if you were to remake Planet of the Apes, and they did with Tim Burton, no one was like they're gonna ruin it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Like,
And I mean, on like,
yeah,
I said this for like, I love that version.
yeah,
Like,
I like
I
it
think
too.
that's the
I like it
best
too. I think at the
version because
time,
it's
yeah,
the most like the original, where these
but with
ones,
updated looks.
right,
Yeah.
right. But there's still, it's a lot of practical effects and people in fucking monkey suits.
Oh
And I
yeah.
was like, dude, that's fucking awesome.
Right.
Because it gave you that more like, you know, actual Planet of the Apes, or even at the end of Spaceballs. Oh shit. There goes the
Right.
planet. You know, like, I'm like, dude, yeah, that's what I
Right.
want to, that's what I
Whereas
want to
like
fucking
these, I
see.
feel like I'm very much watching like apes and not
Right.
human when in ape costumes.
Right. Right. And
Um,
you know, there's definitely it's easier to watch this and get in that mindset versus like a lot of the adventure movies. And I mean, I wouldn't own, I mean, I own Captain America because I thought that one was good. But the Avenger movies specifically, like those are fine and entertaining. But the bad thing about CGI like it just doesn't have the weight of an actual person or an actual being when they're flipping around and doing that. It's still light. Like there's not the weight of a body, so it looks
right.
super fake when it's
Yeah.
mixed in with actual human beings. And you're like, yeah, there's a weight to them. And a lot of these studios still haven't figured that out yet. But when you're dealing with dozens, if not hundreds of apes and maybe like one human here or there, it makes it way easier to watch and believe, okay, yeah, they're
Right.
all in the
Right.
plane of existence. But yeah, yeah, I mean, I agree.
So, what do you think it is then? Because clearly we're fans of the Godzilla and King Kong franchises,
Mhm.
and we're fans of this Planet of the Apes retelling since 2000, whatever it's been, 11. I don't know when the first one was,
I
but
think
why?
2011, and then 2017 was the last one.
Yeah, there's been big gaps.
Right.
Um, why do these movies like they're is it the connection to the characters, or is the stories written better? Because I could not tell you the single story plot line of any Godzilla movie
Um,
since and the Kong movies, like maybe Skull Island, but all of them I've got nothing. Like when we eventually talk about King Kong X
right.
Godzilla, I could tell you what happened, but because that story was ridiculous, but I couldn't tell you its relation to the other movies. And like I didn't even realize that some of those characters were returning characters from the other movies because that's how little invested I have. At least in this next Planet of the Apes, if it's not 100 years in the future, let's say it's 20 years in the future, and we have a different Nova, we could be like, oh, that's the same girl from the last movie who like
Yeah,
fucked them
yeah.
over.
I think what it has to do with is well, both King Kong and Godzilla were one-off movies. They both die, guys, at the
Yeah,
end. Like they die. That's it. It was one and done. And then, oh, Godzilla's got this regenerative ability because he's radioactive and he, whatever. But and then King Kong, it's just like, hey, let's just bring him back and he's gonna fight
right.
Godzilla. So there's not really any canon to a lot of these things. So basically it's like, all right, we're gonna
Start over.
pair these two up
Yeah.
and we're gonna do this, and it's just gonna be giant monsters fighting, which I'm completely here for. But yeah, there's no at this point with where they're going with at least these two together, there's no plot or like
Well, maybe it's because in Planet of the Apes, the main overarching story is humans versus apes.
right,
So like,
right.
so you automatically have an automatic connection to any human and or ape in the film because they are at war with each other always.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
even
well,
in this
yeah,
one, it was like still a war going on. We just didn't know it until the end.
right.
Or
Which was
until, you know,
one of the things where I was like, wait, it's been a long time since I saw the last one, but like,
which I thought that was cool. Like
yeah,
I,
I'm
I
like,
thought that was a cool part of the movie. Like we
didn't
still
he?
have the
Yeah,
through line of this is going to be a battle.
which is, I mean, just I wouldn't even say human nature, just nature. Like it's
Nature, yeah.
always okay. There's these two things that are trying to exist in this area that aren't alike, and they both have the tendency to be aggressive with other strange things. Well, they're going to be aggressive towards each other for
Right,
the end of time, and that's just the way nature is. So
right.
yeah, there's an absolute connection where you can be like, oh, I totally relate to that. Yeah, I got this shitty neighbor that, god, he fucking stinks and he's always throwing his garbage everywhere. Fuck that guy no matter what. So I get it. Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, and visually, like I said, visually I thought it was well done. It was well directed. I just thought for me there was just too many stories going on at once. And that a lot of people do that now. It's been a thing for a long time where they're like, let's have at least three parallel stories going on at once. And I think it's just the way people have learned to write or direct,
Sure.
as opposed to like, all right, we have an hour and a half. Even if it seems kind of cheesy that they just kind of find out this plot or that plot, like we're just going to kind of plow through more stage
It
play
was
like.
it was very plowed through at the end of
Yeah, oh yeah. They're like, all right, we got to wrap this up.
when they do that montage of all the pretty people in the bunker or wherever they
Yeah.
are at like the satellite bunker. I was like,
Hmm.
what is going on here? And
Right. And like, how did the
I
apes find him? I don't know.
yeah. So but yeah, you want to rate it? Let's rate it.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it a 2. Like I said, for me, it was just there's a lot going on. The too much story was a big thing for me. But just watching it's a fun movie. It's long, but it's fun and it's visually entertaining to watch. And I hope if and when they do the next one, they kind of streamline it a little bit and make it a little less muddled and muddy with stories and just kind of streamline the story to have, I'm okay with repetitiveness. So I don't mind it being like, oh, all right, humans versus apes again. I'm like, all right, yeah,
You
that's
know that that's like literally that's the overall what we're going in for.
yeah, that's the thing. So
Yeah.
that's fine. I'll watch an hour and a half of them going back and forth, and then at the end, hey, you know what? We're a group of each side, like, hey, we can live together and
Right.
join forces to fight the evil imperialists, you know, whatever. I'm like, okay,
Sure.
great.
Yeah. Just,
That's
yeah. Just
that's
give
what I
me a
want.
good movie along the way.
Yeah. So yeah, two hairy, apey, gorilla candy corns.
Oh, I think nice. I was too hairy apey. I was waiting
Yeah.
for something else. Nipples or balls, but I
Yeah,
forgot
yeah.
corns is the rating ratio.
There you go.
So I too am giving this a two.
Okay.
Uh, I solid two, a high two, like a 2.25 even. Like it's a good two. It's not a bad two.
Right. Yeah.
Two could be looked at either way, and I think it's a solid for the same reason. I think that's the consensus of this movie from a lot of people. I didn't see anybody raving about it, and I didn't see anybody like shouting at the wall about it. It's very much that was
Yeah.
a
I
fun
mean,
popcorn movie, and it
yeah,
happened.
good.
It's a little
Even
long, but good.
a little long, but even though the apes are still like you still have the repeating type of monkeys where it's all right, you got the fucking, the bad one who's not the biggest or the meanest, but he's the most charismatic and whatever. Then
Sure,
you
sure,
have the gorilla who's the enforcer or the group
sure.
of
Yeah,
gorillas, the enforcers. Then you have the wise orangutan, and then you have like the
yeah.
chimp who saves the day or fights against everything, and he's the
Somehow they
the
all have the
virtuous
same
one.
names.
Right. So, but that's it. It is what it is. And yeah, I mean, I wasn't like, dude, I need to see this, but I was like, hey, you know what? I'll go on the cheap movie night for $5 and watch Planet of the Apes because it's like an iconic thing.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
history.
It's part of our culture. It's like,
Absolutely.
when
And
it's like you go see it because it's so drilled in us.
right,
Even more so than, and it's funny because it's not as old as like a Dracula or a Frankenstein,
right,
but I feel like we get a more solid, cohesive one thought of Planet of the Apes or Godzilla or King Kong. So when they come out, you're like, all right, I'm gonna go see it because it's a King Kong or a Godzilla or Planet of the Apes or something like that. It's just,
right, right.
I'm gonna go see it because it's part of what we do.
Right. The overall story, you know exactly what's gonna happen overall. You know
And
what
I
the plot is.
and I think that's true for people who've never even seen a Planet of the Apes movie.
Right.
Like I'm
Because
sure there's a ton of people who never saw the original ones and have only seen this last,
oh
10
yeah.
years of
Well,
them.
I mean, Charlton Heston's, get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape. And it's
You
like,
ruined it. You ruined it.
yeah, there's the thing. Oh, so these evolved apes turn the tables on the
Yeah.
once, fucking the once all-powerful human beings. And we
Yep.
controlled everything, and now the humans are the ones that are in the cages or whatever. So that's the gimmick. And I'm
Yeah.
here
No,
for it. I'll
I,
watch the next one.
of course, of
Yeah.
course. I was trying to see if there was a next one already announced, but definitely not.
Yeah. It will be another like 5 years. And I'm like, oh,
Ugh,
you know what? We're gonna do that Planet of the Apes thing again.
it's just too far.
Yeah, they should do.
As long as they don't wait as long as like a fucking Avatar movie.
Well, they all worked on Avatar, so it makes sense.
Oh, did they? Yeah, that
Uh-huh.
does make sense.
Yep.
And
Um,
it's so silly too, man, because like the first Avatar, you're like, oh, this is beautiful and crazy, and the 3D is amazing. By the time the new one came out, you're like, I don't even care, but I guess I'll go.
yeah.
And I
Which
saw
would
it, I watched it, I'm like, this was really cool looking, but I don't care.
yeah, there's a window for that stuff.
So much time.
Yeah.
So much time. It's
But
way too
the
much time.
like we just discussed, the one thing this franchise does have is it's the Planet of the Apes. So you're like, oh, the new one where
Oh, yeah. Like, so there's no IP. Like, this is a very interesting topic because, like, who owns Planet of the Apes? Is it Warner Brothers? Like, what's the studio? I don't
I
even
don't
know.
know. Yeah.
So let's say here, I'm going to do a quick Google while I yammer on about it. So let's say we have Disney World has fucking, what is it called? The fucking Pandora, which is where fucking the we were just talking about what the fucking movie is it? We were just talking about
Steamboat
the
Willie.
blue, no, the blue people, Steve
Oh, Avatar.
Avatar. Fuck, thanks.
Yeah.
Sorry. Um, so we have an Avatar movie that did really well, right? James Cameron, it's very
Right.
popular. And then Disney builds a theme park that nobody really cares about because when was the last time you saw anybody walk around with like an Avatar shirt on or a hat? It's never talked about in pop culture. It really has
Right.
no place in our zeitgeist, right?
Mm-mm.
But Planet of the Apes, a movie that is owned by still looking for it. A movie that has been around for, oh my God, whoever's listening is going to scream at the wall when fucking they listen to this.
It's
Um,
what editing's for.
but 20th century, so that's Fox, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So so like they have like, you know, Planet of the Apes is a established thing, right? And
Absolutely.
everybody goes sees these movies, and maybe it's not like this cultural like big talk about phenomenon the way Pandora and Avatar was and the way it looked, but they sunk so much time into the next movies that it took 10 years to make one, and they made this whole theme park that apparently looks beautiful, but who has any connection to that movie?
Right.
No one. But if you'd made a Planet of the Apes amusement park, like a ride at Universal Studios or
Oh yeah.
whatever, like you would have people go and be like, this is great. And you could enjoy it without seeing the movies, but you know what it is. Like everybody knows
Well,
what Planet of the
dude,
Apes
it's
is.
like the
It's
Planet
like a
of
King
the
Kong ride
Apes.
at, at
Right.
Universal Studios. Like it's a
All
great ride
these
because it's King Kong.
old, like iconic things. You can even put Jason, Freddy, and all that stuff in like all the Universal
Sure.
stuff. King Kong, the Planet of the Apes. They're almost like they're a phenomenon, like Elvis, right?
Sure.
You have people that have never listened to his music, don't know, have never seen anything, but they know who he is. They know what he looks like. They know like that, okay, yeah, that's Elvis. And he did this and whatever. He's got the jumpsuit. And then every so often there's like, some DJ will remix a song and it'll fucking be the theme song for some TV show or it'll be on radio, like whatever. And then they'll put out some sort of movie. So it's like always in the pop culture, just ether.
Right. Everybody knows
So,
who those people are.
right,
Everybody knows Star Wars. Everybody knows
right. Star Wars
these
too. So
things
yeah,
like
you
that.
cannot make a fucking movie for 10 years and then like, oh,
Okay.
we're going to do a new
I
Planet of
found
the
one.
Apes movie. Like,
I
oh
found
shit.
Invasion of the Planet of the Apes is a motion-based trackless dark ride based on the latest reimagining of the Planet of the Apes film franchise, set just after the events of the second film, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Riders must assist Malcolm in an attempt to warn Caesar that the other apes are about to attack the new group of rogue humans. Once aboard the hovercraft vehicles, guests must go on a dangerous journey, which will help them take the apes back to their home base in the forest beyond the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
It's
Um,
pretty intense.
although although Genting Skyworlds has been soft opening since 2022, Invasion of the Planet of the Apes did not open to the public until fall the same year. Where is this? Oh, I don't know where this place is. Oh, Malaysia.
Oh, okay. Of course. Makes
Oh,
sense.
it looks pretty cool. I might find like a video later to see if there's a ride through of it. Because
Yeah.
why isn't there a Planet of the Apes like like worlds within Universal Studios or Disney World?
I mean, they should. Everyone loves like monkeys and shit, like no matter what.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, that'd be cool. But yeah, man, I agree. We'll see, we'll wait till the next one. Hopefully it's not too long. Or
I mean, look at the numbers that this movie does. It made 60 million in its first weekend. It's already grossed
jeez.
360 million, It's doubled its budget with what it's made in profits. So like this, and it wasn't even like a movie that anybody was that stoked for.
Right.
So
It's
like
like a dark horse,
clearly
just
it's a very strong,
moneymaker. Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, here we go. Production companies. Disney made this movie. It's
get on it,
Disney Studios
Disney.
Australia. Why isn't
Fucking
there a fucking Planet of the Apes ride at Disney World?
should be. They should be.
Anyway, it's a
Yeah.
conversation. I feel like if Oobs was on, she would know all the answers to this.
She's like
She
Disney.
is the ride
And I'd be
expert.
like, they're a bunch of fucking pedophiles. I'd be like, don't talk bad about Disney.
Nazis, Nazi
Yeah.
pedophiles.
But yeah, that's a good solid 2 for the average. So 2 candy corns. We think you should go see it. It'll be entertaining. Don't expect to get a very streamlined story. There's a lot of story and it's long, but if you just let that go and just watch it, you'll enjoy it.
If you're
So
watching the other ones, it's a great addition to the other movies. Not necessarily groundbreaking, but a good story.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, dude, thanks for crossing streams with me in the
Oh
absence of
yeah,
Oubliette.
never
Um,
cross the streams.
yeah, right. No. it happens sometimes. But yeah, we'll be back at it with Oobliette to discuss another ape movie and then a lizard movie with the group back together again. Thanks everyone for tuning in again to Monster Candy Podcast, and thank you, Gucci T. You weren't mad Mike Terry today. You were just kind of like,
I was kind of mad. I was
Well,
kinda
hello,
waving at my-
Mr. Fancy.
I hear you looking for candy, man, bitch.
that's it.
Give me some sugar.
That's awesome. Yeah, but man, thanks again, and we'll catch you fuckers next time. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, thanks again.
You ever dance with the devil by the pale moonlight? We don't have to be mean.
Yeah, Jack Burton just looks that big old storm right square in the eye and he says, "Get away from her, you bitch!"
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Your move, creep.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.